Pema Wangjom Thongdok, an Indian citizen born in the northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh, was held back during a layover at the Shanghai Airport. Her Indian documents, that is, her passport and visa, were questioned by Chinese officials. Why? Because Beijing refuses to acknowledge the existence of the Indian state that Prema calls home. When India issued a strong diplomatic protest, a démarche, demanding an explanation, the response from Beijing was not an apology, it was a declaration.
首先，藏南地区是中国领土，中方从不承认印度非法设立的所谓阿努纳恰尔邦。
But India fired back immediately, and this time they didn't mince words. In an official statement released on November 25th, MEA spokesperson Sri Ranadhir Jaiswal called out Beijing's hypocrisy. He pointed out that Chinese authorities violated international air travel conventions and even broke their own regulations regarding visa-free transit. His message to China was blunt and final. Arunachal is an integral and inalienable part of India, and this is a self-evident fact. No amount of denial by the Chinese side is going to change this indisputable reality. This exchange proves that the map war has moved from paper to real life. It is no longer just about drawing lines on a chart. It is about harassing innocent travelers. In 2023, China's Ministry of Natural Resources released a standard map. It brazenly claimed the entire state of Arunachal Pradesh and the Aksai Chin region as sovereign Chinese territory. This cartographic aggression was accompanied by an announcement that Beijing would standardize or rename 11 places within Arunachal Pradesh, giving them Mandarin names. State media called it National Mapping Awareness Publicity Week, but for India, it was a paper invasion. The message was clear. Beijing views Arunachal not as an Indian state, but as southern Tibet. But why is China so obsessed with this land? To understand why Pema Thongdok was detained in Shanghai, we have to look back at a treaty signed over a century ago. The story begins in 1911. The Shanghai Revolution has just ended China's last imperial dynasty, throwing the country into chaos. The British, who were ruling India, saw an opportunity to settle the turbulent borders while China was distracted. The key player was Tibet. At that time, Tibet functioned largely independently, and its lamas wanted India to intervene to resolve their rifts with China. In 1913, a conference was organized in Shimla. The British invited China and Tibet with the goal of finally drawing the line. However, the Chinese envoy refused to accept the terms. As a result, the treaty was signed as a bilateral agreement between British India and Tibet. This treaty, known as the Shimla Convention, drew the famous McMahon Line. It clarifies that Tibet would be divided, inner Tibet would be under Chinese control, while outer Tibet, which bordered India, would be autonomous. Crucially, the border was drawn at the watershed of the Himalayas, placing Tawang and what is now Arunachal Pradesh firmly within India. China walked away from the table, but for decades, the border remained relatively quiet until the world changed in 1949. In 1949, the communists took power in Beijing. By 1950, the People's Liberation Army marched into Tibet. A 17-point agreement was signed, and just like that, the ancient buffer between India and China vanished. Tibet was now China, while Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru hoped for friendship with this new neighbor. His Home Minister, that is, the Iron Man Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, saw the danger coming. In a now famous letter to Nehru, Patel warned that India was being naive. He wrote with chilling accuracy, "The final action of the Chinese, in my judgment, is little short of perfidy. Even though we regard ourselves as friends of China, the Chinese do not regard us as their friends." Patel realized that with the disappearance of Tibet, China had expanded almost up to India's gates. He noted that since China never signed the 1914 Simla Convention, they would eventually disown the border. He warned that Chinese ambitions covered not just the Himalayan slopes, but important parts of Assam itself. Patel was right, but at that time, Nehru famously declared, "Map or no map, the McMahon Line is and will be our border." He called the area NEFA, the Northeast Frontier Agency, believing diplomacy would hold the line. That confidence was shattered in 1962. The Sino-Indian War saw Chinese troops infiltrate the McMahon Line, advancing almost 90 kilometers into Indian territory. Though They eventually withdrew to the original line in 1963. The trust was broken forever. In 1972, Nepal was renamed Arunachal Pradesh and later became a full Indian state. But China never stopped calling it South Tibet. From 1962 war to the 2023 map and now the detention of an Indian citizen at Shanghai Airport, the strategy remains the same. China uses psychological warfare to keep the dispute alive. Despite endless rounds of military talks, satellite images today show both armies standing face to face, with roads, helipads, and bunkers being built on both sides. The incident in Shanghai proves one thing: the map wars are no longer just on paper. They are affecting real people, and the tension along the Himalayas is far from over.